Welcome to Trends on Thursdays, where I tell you about the trends I discussed with my clients this week. This week I'll talk about digital ad spend, security, social media regulation, and baby clothes. First up, for the first time in history, US digital ad spend is higher than traditional ad spend. 129 billion digital versus 109 in so-called traditional media. And by the way, almost 60% of that digital ad spend ends up in the pockets of two companies, Google and Facebook, with Amazon quickly approaching its own 10 share on number 3. Hardest hit on the traditional media side are print media like newspaper and magazine, and directories with all their yellow pages. And by the way, it's not just the ad revenue that's eroding for traditional media, it's the audience. Seriously, when was the last time you've seen actually somebody pick up the yellow pages, unless they're like starting a fire or something? Anyways, most magazines are trying to go digital as quickly as they can, where they can at least keep the digital ad revenue for themselves. The biggest threat to any company in 2019 is obscurity, especially when you're a media company. So while the newspapers are still trying to hold on to their getting paid for reading what they put out model, the TV stations are eating their lunch because guess what? They are free and easier to consume. So when I plan marketing strategies for businesses and professionals, the hardest pill to swallow is always that the world doesn't work the way it did 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even 6 months ago. And you need to adapt or go the way of the dinosaur, or the yellow pages. Anyways, next up, someone gets their identity stolen every 2 seconds in the US. By the end of this video, that will be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 150 or so people. $190 billion are lost every year to credit card fraud, and even though only part of that comes out of the consumer's pocket, victims often end up having to borrow money, dip into their savings, lose out on opportunities, and having their credit and, more importantly, their trust ruined for years. One solution that goes beyond passwords and even two-factor authentication is the YubiKey, a hardware token that can work with your laptop or iPhone or Android, depending on the solution. You insert the YubiKey, and I'm assuming I pronounced that right, Y-U-B-I key. Anyways, you insert the YubiKey into the USB port of your device and authenticate by touching it. The average professional spends more than 10 hours a year entering and resetting passwords, and especially if you've been in one of the recent hacks that included email address and password, the YubiKey might be a great solution, and it sells for like 45 bucks. It's working with over 300 providers already, including Google, Facebook, DocuSign, Dropbox. You get the idea. I'll leave an Amazon link for the keychain version of it in the comments below if you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Next up, social media is largely about psychology and sociology. Makes sense, right? Because we're social animals and, well, we're wired to act in certain ways, driven by, for example, the dopamine hit we get when a new Facebook notification comes in, or the stress hormone cortisol when we miss a Snapchat streak or haven't checked Facebook. FOMO, the fear of missing out on steroids, or hormones rather. Anyways, social media companies know how to maximize that dopamine hit of new notifications, and they give you a customized addicting behavior. Republican Senator Josh Hawley from Montana has proposed the Social Media Addiction Reduction Act, the SMART Act. It would ban tactics that keep users on platforms longer, or infinite feeds that just keep going, like Snapchat streaks or the YouTube infinite autoplay that will take you to the next video till you run out of power, or I guess heartbeats, whichever comes first. Accept and decline buttons would have to be the same size and color to help consumers make smarter choices. Of course, there are literally thousands of these little tricks, and we use many of them in marketing every day. Matter of fact, the senator himself on his campaign website has the donate button standing out like a beacon in bright red, employing a little psychology there himself. The rest of the website is in patriotic red, white, and blue, a little more applied psychology from the senator. Look, I'm not saying it's a bad bill. It's probably a good one. What I'm saying is there is, again, the slippery slope of what should be regulated by the government. One more, the Washington Post published a great article on an outlier in the baby clothing space. While Babies R Us and Gymboree are gone and many other players in the market are suffering, Carter's is using a strategy I would call, if you can't beat them, make them work for you. By partnering and making private label clothes for their perceived main competitors, Walmart, Target, and Amazon, and by the way, Carter's has about 1,000 of its own stores, and they're simply dominating the kids' sleepwear niche with 28% of US sales. The interesting thing is that they put out different versions that look notably different but have a common theme. So there may be a Macy's version and an Amazon version, and Macy's is twice as much, but it keeps everyone happy, especially Carter's. This, of course, is not the only place where this can work. In many industries, there are others that are not necessarily competing with you that have access to your customers, readers, viewers, donors, whatever it might be. And with a strategic partnership, you may both get what you want. As the saying goes, instead of fighting over a bigger piece of the same pie, can we just make the pie bigger? It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does, and you know, it's worth a try. That's it for your this week's Trends on Thursdays. Of course, I will be back Monday with my Monday Thought Starter for the week. Until then, I'm Tobias Wilhelm.